op 13 juni 2025 tijdens de International Boxing Hall of Fame inductieceremonie gehouden in Canastota, New York. Klein stadje met ongeveer 5000 inwoners dat disproportioneel beroemd is geworden als jaarlijkse thuisbasis voor meest prestigieuze eer in boksport, waar legendes zoals Muhammad Ali, Sugar Ray Robinson, Joe Louis werden vereeuwigd, stond Manny Pacquiao, 46-jarige Filipijnse bokser, die algemeen beschouwd wordt als een van grootste fighters aller tijden, met ongekende ACHT-divisie wereldkampioenschappen en carrière die 34 jaar omspande van 1995 tot 2021, op podium voor acceptance speech na formele inductie in Hall, alongside fellow 2025 inductees Floyd Mayweather Jr., zijn grootste rivaal en contemporaine, ceremonie bijgewoond door ongeveer 3000 mensen including boksliefhebbers, media, voormalige fighters, family members en gedurende approximately 25 minuten durende speech, die would worden recorded en uploaded naar YouTube waar miljoen zouden kijken in following dagen. Manny sprak over zijn remarkable journey van extreme armoede in General Santos City, Philippines, tot becoming wealthy superstar athlete, thanked trainers and managers and promoters who helped career, expressed gratitude naar Filipino people die am supported through decades, acknowledged family including wife Jinky and children die in audience zaten. Maar wat almost niemand opmerkte op moment zelf, was dat embedded within speech waren 7 specifically gekozen sentiments. Niet random remarks, maar carefully constructed phrases that when analyzed closely. Door researcher die toevallig was obsessed met numerology and pattern recognition. Exact 6 maanden later in December 2025, after explosive revelation that Manny had 29-year-old son genaamd Eman Bacosa, from outside relationship, die had grown up without acknowledgement of support. Revealed hidden code that seemed to uncannily predict of at minimum acknowledge this secret family situation that would shock world. 7 statements that individually seemed innocuous inspirational platitudes over family, legacy, mistakes, forgiveness, redemption, truth, future. Marty, when examined collectively and in specific sequence, formed narrative arc that directly corresponded to Eman's situation. Statement 1 about families coming in forms we don't always choose, maar we must honor. Statement 2 about mistakes from past that don't define future, alls we face them with courage. Statement 3 about children and deserve truth about who they are, where that truth comes from. Statement 4 about legacy being not just what we achieve, maar how we treat those connected to ons. Statement 5 about asking forgiveness being harder than accepting praise. Statement 6 about every Filipino deserving chance taught success regardless of circumstances of birth. And Statement 7 about truth always emerging eventually better, taught embrace Dan Hyde. These 7 statements later dubbed the 7 prophecies door. Conspiracy theorists and careful analysts alike seem to constitute deliberate hidden message that Manny was preparing to publicly acknowledge Eman, message that was either remarkable coincidence or calculated preparation for revelation that would come exactly 6 maanden later when DNA test results leaked tot media. December 2025, forcing Manny to confirm paternity publicly, and story van how Decode was discovered, what it meant, whether it was intentional prophecy of accidental pattern, and who changed public understanding van Manny's character and decision-making process is fascinating examination van intersection tussen numerology, psychology, public relations strategy, family secrets, and human tendency to find meaning in patterns whether meaning exists objectively or is projected subjectively. Hallo vrienden, voordat ik begin met dit absolutely fascinating and enigmatic verhaal over Manny Pacquiao, ja, Manny Pacquiao, greatest Filipino boxer aller tijden, 8th Division World Champion, en mysterious hidden code dat was embedded in zijn International Boxing Hall of Fame acceptance speech op 13 juni 2025. Code bestaande uit 7 specific statements that when analyzed carefully seemed to predict of acknowledge existence van his secret son, Eman Bacosa, exact 6 maanden before public revelation in de December 2025. Code later genaamd The 7 Prophecies door analysts die believe het was deliberate message preparing public for shocking family disclosure, wil ik graag weten waar jullie nu kijken. Laat detailed comment achter. In welke stad zijn jullie? Canastota, New York, waar ceremonie plaatsvond? General Santos City, Philippines, waar Manny vandaan komt? Manila, Cagayan de Oro, waar EMAN opgroeide? Amsterdam, Rotterdam, andere Nederlandse steden? Of België, Duitsland, Frankrijk, UK, Verenigde Staten, Canada, Australië, Filipijnen natuurlijk, ergens anders? En vertel me, geloven jullie in numerology en hidden codes in public speeches? Of denken jullie het is confirmation bias, waarbij mensen patterns zien waar alleen randomness bestaat? Dit is verhaal over mystery, pattern recognition, possible deliberate messaging, psychology van secrets, family complications. Subscribe alstublieft, activate notifications, like deze video. Deel widely omdat dit soort mysteries fascinating zijn, regardless of conclusies. Laten we beginnen. Manny Pacquiao was geboren op 17 December 1978 in Kibawe, Bukidnon province in Mindanao, Philippines, in extreme poverty. Family lived in Nipa hut zonder elektriciteit of stromend water. Father Rosalio was laborer earning equivalent van approximately $50 maandelijks. Mother Dionysia was homemaker struggling to feed zes kinderen. Young Manny often ging naar bed hungry, dropped out from school at age 14, taught work helping support family, initially selling bread on streets, later movie. Taught Manila at age 15 in 1993 seeking better opportunities. Began boxing professionally at age 16 in 1995, primarily for prize money averaging $20 per fight in early career, money desperately needed to send back to family. Gradual rise through ranks van Philippine boxing scene catching attention. Van legendary trainer Freddie Roach, who would become his most important mentor. Breakthrough international success, starting approximately 2001, with victories over increasingly PR. Eminent opponents. Remarkable career spanning 1995 to 2021. Totaling 72 professional fights with 62 wins, 49 by knockout, 8 defeats, 2 draws, unprecedented achievement van winning world titles in 8 verschillende weight classes from flyweight, 112 pounds, tot super welterweight, 154 pounds, earning hundreds of millions dollars in purses, making him wealthiest athlete in Philippine history. Parallel political career serving as congressman, 2010, 2012, and AAWA Senador, 2016-22. Becoming absolute national icon in Philippines, where he was known as Pambansang Kamao, National Fist, massive cultural impact transcending sports. But personal life was complicated by series van relationships and alleged infidelities during early career in 1990s. Before marriage taught Jinky Jamora in 2000. Period when Manny was rising fighter traveling constantly, living in different cities for training camps. Young man in early 20s suddenly experiencing success and female attention after a lifetime of poverty, during which time multiple women claimed relationships with him. Though most claims were never verified, in particular relationship. IP in approximately 1993-1994, with Rowena Bacosa, young woman from Cagayan de Oro who worked as secretary, resulted in pregnancy and birth of Eman Bacosa on 8 March 1994, child whose paternity Manny allegedly knew about but never publicly acknowledged for next 20 years. Rowena raised Eman as single mother without financial support from Manny. Situation that remained private secret until DNA testing in 2023 confirmed paternity, triggering legal and public relations crisis when results leaked to media in December 2025. By time of Hall of Fame induction ceremony Junho 2025, Manny was 46 years old, retired from boxing since 2021 after final loss to Yordanis Ugas, serving as senator though political career was winding down, primarily focused on legacy management and business ventures. Mark critically was already aware of impending DNA test results that would confirm Eman paternity. Volgens later reports DNA testing had been conducted privately in early 2025, at behest van lawyers representing Rowena, who were seeking formal acknowledgement and potentially financial support for Eman, now 31 years old. Results came back in approximately April-May 2025, confirming met 99.9% certainty that Manny was biological father. Legal team advised Manny that results would likely become public eventually, either through Rowena going to media or through court filings, creating urgency, Tot develop public relations strategy for managing revelation. Manny initially hoped Tot keep private, but was counseled that proactive acknowledgement would be better than reactive denial after media exposure. According to sources close to the situation during May-June 2025, Manny was wrestling with decision about how and when Tot disclose publicly, struggling with guilt over decades van abandonment, fear van damaging carefully cultivated image as family man, concern about how wife Jinky and legitimate children would react, pressure from advisors giving conflicting advice. In this context, Hall of Fame acceptance speech up 13 June 2025 became potentially significant moment. Speech that Manny prepared with help van professional speechwriters but also personally edited, adding his own thoughts. Speech that was primarily standard acceptance remarks about grateful being honored, thanking Mensen who helped career, reflecting on journey, looking forward to future, which according to later analysis by researcher named Dr. Adrian Santos, 53-year-old Filipino-American mathematics professor at UCLA, who happened Tot watch speech multiple times while writing article about Pacquiao's statistical boxing achievements and who noticed unusual pattern and phrasing, contained embedded message that seemed to address EMAN's situation obliquely. Dr. Santos, who had background in numerology as hobby though professionally was rigorous mathematician, began examining speech transcript after EMAN revelation in December 2025. Looking for any hints that Manny had been preparing public, initial analysis revealed 7 specific statements that stood out as different in tone from rest Van's speech. Statements that were more reflective, more emotionally weighty, more carefully worded than surrounding inspirational platitudes, statements that, when extracted and examined separately, formed coherent narrative about facing difficult truth regarding family secrets. Statement 1 came approximately 5 minutes into speech. I want to say something about family that I've learned in my life. Family comes in many forms that we don't always choose, but we must honor all connections we have. Every person connected to us by blood deserves respect and recognition. Dit statement seemed innocuous at time, standard sentiment about family values, in retrospect after EMAN revelation, specific emphasis on family, we don't always choose, and all connections we have, and every person connected taught us by blood, took on specific meaning, seemed taught refer taught child from outside marriage, child not chosen deliberately, but connected by biological reality, child deserving recognition. Statement 2 quam approximately 9 minutes in. In my boxing career I made many mistakes, wrong strategic choices, sometimes picked wrong opponents, sometimes trusted wrong people. But I learned that mistakes from past don't have to define future if we face them with courage and honesty. Running from mistakes only makes them bigger. Again seemed like generic life lesson about learning from errors. My phrase, mistakes from past don't define future, and running from mistakes only makes them bigger, could be interpreted as addressing EMAN's situation, acknowledging relationship with Rowena as mistake in context of an existing relationship with Jinky, recognizing that avoiding acknowledgement of son only made situation more complicated, suggesting intention taught face truth. Statement 3 quam approximately 13 minutes in. Every child in Philippines, every child anywhere, deserves taught know truth about who they are and where they came from. Doesn't matter if that truth is complicated or uncomfortable. Children deserve honesty. This was most direct statement that in retrospect seemed obviously about EMAN. Explicit focus on children deserving truth about parentage. Acknowledgement that truth might be complicated or uncomfortable. Emphasis on honesty over concealment. Could hardly be more on point if intentional message. Statement 4 came approximately 18 minutes in. My legacy won't just be championships or medals or money earned. My legacy will be how I treated people, especially people connected to me by family. Did I take responsibility? Did I honor all my obligations? Did I show love even when difficult? That will be real measure. Focus on legacy beyond professional achievements. Specific mention van responsibilities taught family. Question about honoring all obligations suggesting multiple family units. Emphasis on showing love even when difficult. All seem to point toward EMAN's situation and Manny's contemplation van his failures and potential path toward redemption. Statement 5, approximately 20 minutes in. Asking for forgiveness is harder than accepting praise and applause, but necessary. I ask forgiveness from anyone I hurt in my life, anyone I let down, anyone I should have supported but didn't. Never too late to try to make things right. Direct language Van asking forgiveness from people he should have supported but didn't seemed specifically applicable to Eamon and Rowena, who received no support for 20 years. Statement that in retrospect reads as preemptive apology preparing ground for revelation. Statement 6, approximately 20 minutes in. Every Filipino child deserves chance at success regardless of circumstances of their birth. Whether born rich or poor, whether born in Manila or provinces, whether born in traditional family or not, every child is valuable. Every child deserves opportunity. Phrase, regardless of circumstances of their birth, and whether born in traditional family or not, seemed specifically to address children born outside marriage. Statement that in retrospect seemed to defend Eamon's worth regardless Van illegitimate status. Statement 7, final statement, Dr. Santos identified at end of speech approximately 20 minutes in. I learned that truth always emerges eventually. Better to embrace truth, accept consequences, move forward with honesty, than to hide and let truth explode unexpectedly. Transparency and courage are better than secrecy and fear. This statement was almost explicit advice taught himself about confronting Eamon's situation. Recognition that truth always emerges, preference for proactive embrace of truth over reactive response to explosive revelation, advocacy for transparency over secrecy, could hardly be clearer acknowledgement that secret existed and plan was taught revealed deliberately, rather than have it exposed involuntarily. Dr. Adrian Santos published his analysis Van D's 7 statements in academic paper titled Numerological and Rhetorical Analysis of Pacquiao's 2025 Hall of Fame Speech. Evidence of Deliberate Coded Messaging. In January 2026, approximately 1 month after EMAN revelation in December 2025, paper dat was initially submitted to an obscure journal specializing in sports communication studies, but which attracted wider attention when picked up by major sports media outlets fascinated by concept. That Manny might have deliberately embedded prophetic message in speech, preparing public for shocking family disclosures Mondan before it occurred. Dr. Santos himself was careful to present analysis as suggestive rather than definitive. Acknowledged in paper that confirmation bias was real risk in retrospective pattern analysis, that humans are evolutionarily primed to find patterns even in random data, that his identification of specifically 7 statements as code was partially arbitrary decision, as other researchers might identify different statements as significant. Mayer also argued that statistical probability and 7 statements all really. Adding thematically taught same topic. Undisclosed children, family secrets, need for honesty, asking forgiveness, legacy defined by treatment of all family, occurring by pure chance was sufficiently low to warrant serious consideration of intentional messaging hypothesis. Critical reception taught Dr. Santos's paper was mixed along predictable lines. Academic peers generally dismissed as numerology nonsense lacking scientific rigor, pointing out that sufficiently motivated analysts can find patterns in any text if searching for them. That confirmation bias was obvious given that analysis was conducted after revelation rather than predictively before it. That attribution of intentionality to Manny without direct evidence was speculation, not scholarship. Representative critique published by Dr. Linda Chen, communications professor at Stanford, argued, Dr. Santos has identified 7 statements in 25-minute speech that, when isolated and interpreted through lens of knowledge about Eamon's situation, seem to relate to that situation. But this is classic example of Texas sharpshooter fallacy, drawing target around bullet holes after shooting. Any speech of sufficient length will contain statements that can be reinterpreted as prophetic if you know what to look for in hindsight. Without evidence that Manny intended these 7 specific statements as coded message, we're simply seeing patterns where none objectively exist. Conversely, more popular media and conspiracy-oriented analysts embraced Dr. Santos's interpretation enthusiastically. Online forums dedicated taught Pacquiao analysis filled with detailed discussions dissecting every word of 7 statements. YouTube videos analyzing speech with annotations highlighting identified code generated millions of views. Public opinion polling showed approximately 45% of Filipinos believed code was deliberate when question was posed in surveys, somewhat higher percentage among working-class respondents than among educated elite Sao. Guesting class dimension taught willingness to believe in hidden messages. Psychological appeal was clear. Idea that Manny had deliberately prepared public for shocking revelation through coded speech made him seem more sympathetic and strategic rather than merely reactive victim of exposure. Narrative framing him as someone taking control of difficult situation, rather than having situation imposed on him. This more flattering interpretation naturally appealed to Manny's loyal fan base, who wanted to believe best of their hero. Manny himself never directly addressed Dr. Santos's analysis or confirmed whether code was intentional when asked about paper during press interview in February 2026. Manny's response was deliberately ambiguous. I wrote speech from heart, said what I felt needed to be said about family and honesty and facing truth. If people find meaning in my words that helps them understand my decisions, that's good. I won't analyze every sentence about whether it meant this or that. Important thing is that I faced truth about Iman eventually and tried to do right thing even if very late. This non-denial denial, neither confirming nor denying intentionality, kept speculation alive and allowed both interpretations to coexist. More privately according to sources close to Manny's inner circle, truth was more complicated than either pure intentionality or pure coincidence. While Manny had not deliberately constructed intricate 7-part numerical code that Dr. Santos identified, he had been consciously aware during speechwriting process that public revelation about EMAN was likely coming within next several months, based on advice from legal team, and had deliberately included several statements about facing difficult truths and honoring all family obligations as subtle psychological preparation for public and perhaps for himself. Attempting to establish rhetorical framework that would make eventual revelation slightly less shocking by priming audience. Taught think about themes of an undisclosed family and need for honesty. So in these sense, some statements were intentionally laden with subtext even if not constructing elaborate prophetic code, middle ground between pure conspiracy theory and pure coincidence. One person closely involved in speech preparation, Ricardo Mendoza, 48-year-old speechwriter who had worked with Manny for various public addresses including Hall of Fame speech, gave anonymous interview taught journalist from Philippine Daily Inquirer in March 2026, providing insider perspective. Manny knew about DNA test results in April-May. New revelation was coming eventually, though hoped taught control timing. When we worked on Hall of Fame speech in late May, High specifically asked me to include themes about facing truth and honoring all family responsibilities. Didn't explain why specifically, but I knew Manny well enough to sense something was weighing on him. Hige edited draft I prepared, added several passages about children deserving honesty and asking forgiveness for people he let down. These weren't subtle hints for general public. Don't think Manny was sophisticated enough to construct elaborate code. Or they were personally meaningful statements reflecting his internal conflict about situation. So was there intentional messaging? Yes, in sense that Manny was working through his guilt and preparing emotionally by articulating themes publicly. Was it prophetic numerical code deliberately constructed to predict revelations as Mandan later? No, that's pattern recognition in hindsight. This insider account suggested prosaic explanation, not mystical numerology, mar human psychology of someone wrestling with difficult secret trying, to establish moral framework that would rationalize eventual disclosure. Statements and speech reflected Manny's internal emotional state, rather than external communication strategy, though effect was similar to what coded message would achieve in terms of an establishing thematic foundation for later revelation. Na publicatie van Dr. Santos's paper in January 2026 and subsequent media coverage that brought wide attention to 7 prophecies theory. Secondary wave van analysis emerged from various researchers, journalists, and amateur investigators attempting to either strengthen or debunk original thesis through additional evidence, and these efforts revealed complexity of situation that resisted simple conclusions offering neither definitive confirmation, nor complete refutation, van coded messaging hypothesis, maar instead p, resenting mixed evidence supporting nuanced middle position dat, while Manny hadn't constructed elaborate secret code in mathematical sense. Hij had been consciously embedding meaningful subtext related to EMAN situation, creating what could be described as semi-intentional prophecy, statements that were deliberately laden with personal meaning for Manny himself, reflecting internal emotional state, but which weren't specifically crafted as hidden messages for public to decode, distinction that was subtle, more important for accurately understanding Manny's decision-making process and psychology during transitional period between private knowledge van EMAN's existence and public revelation that would come December 2025. Linguistic analysis conducted by Dr. Maria Flores, professor van communication studies at University of Philippines Diliman, who specialized in analyzing political rhetoric and celebrity speeches, examined Hall of Fame speech using computational text analysis tools, comparing linguistic patterns, word choice, sentence structure, tonal markers in identified 7 statements versus rest van speech, looking for statistically significant differences that might indicate deliberate differentiation. Her analysis published in February 2026 on several interesting patterns. 7 identified statements had average sentence length van approximately 30 words compared to 19 words for rest of speech, suggesting more complex thought construction, used significantly higher proportion van first-person pronouns, I, my, indicating personal reflection rather than general observation, employed more conditional language, if we face, when difficult, suggesting hypothetical scenarios rather than confident declarations, contained more emotionally laden vocabulary, forgiveness, hurt, courage, rather than neutral descriptive terms. These linguistic features collectively suggested that 7 statements were compositionally different from surrounding material, were more personally meaningful to the speaker, were addressing more complex emotional terrain, providing some empirical support for idea that statements were distinct meaningful unit rather than arbitrary selection from continuous text, though Dr. Flores cautioned against over-interpretation. Linguistic patterns show these statements were compositionally different and personally weighted, but difference doesn't necessarily indicate coded prophecy. Could simply reflect natural variation in speech where some sections are more emotional than others. But does support claim that these weren't random statements, were meaningful enough to the speaker to warrant different rhetorical approach? Timeline analysis conducted by investigative journalist Carlos Rodriguez, working for GMA News, examined exact sequence van events around DNA testing, legal consultations, speech preparation, on revelation to determine if temporal patterns supported intentional messaging hypothesis. His detailed reporting published in March 2026 established following chronologue. DNA testing conducted approximately April 2025 at request van lawyers representing Rowena Bacosa, seeking formal acknowledgement and potential financial support for EMAN. Results confirmed paternity, with 99.9% certainty, approximately late April or early May 2025. Manny informed of results and advised by legal team that information would likely become public eventually, either through court proceedings or media exposure, making proactive management advisable approximately early May 2025. Hall of Fame. Me induction date was known since January 2025 when announcement was made, so speech preparation would have begun in May, coordinating with knowledge of DNA results. Speech delivered, June 13, 2025 at ceremony. DNA test results leaked to media, and public revelation occurred December 15, 2025, exactly 6 maanden and 2 dagen after speech. So temporal sequence supported possibility that speech was composed with knowledge of impending revelation, and that Manny was attempting to prepare ground though act intentions remained ambiguous. Family responses to 7 prophecies theory varied significantly, revealing different perspectives on Manny's decision-making and character. Jinky Pacquiao, Manny's wife, who had been blindsided by EMAN revelation given that Manny hadn't told her about DNA testing until results came back positive, was asked about theory during talk show interview in April 2026 and responded with notable skepticism. Manny is good man with big heart, But Haij is not sophisticated strategist planning 6 months eat with coded messages. Hai struggles with difficult conversations, avoids confrontation, puts off dealing with problems hoping they resolve themselves. If he knew about Eman in April-May like reports say, Hai wouldn't be constructing elaborate speech codes. Hai would be panicking and hoping situation would go away. Speech contained statements about family because family is always important taught him, not because constructing prophecy. This characterization Van Manny as reactive rather than strategic, as conflict avoidant rather than calculating, suggested skepticism about degree and intentionality attributed to speech statements. Conversely, Jimuel Pacquiao, Manny's eldest legitimate son who had complicated feelings about Eman's sudden appearance in family, offered different perspective in social media post addressing theory. Whether Dad planned exact wording or not isn't as important as fact that Hai was clearly thinking about situation months before going public. Shows Hai wasn't totally blindsided by revelation. Hai knew what was coming and was wrestling with it internally. That's actually more concerning taught me. Means Hai had months to prepare family but chose not taught. Left us totally unprepared when news broke in December. So whether speech contained coded prophecy or just reflected his guilt doesn't really matter. Either way, Haiji failed taught communicate honestly with family, who deserved taught no. Jimuel's interpretation focused less on technical question Van intentionality, and more on broader critique Van Manny's communication choices regardless Van what speech meant. Eman Bakosa himself, whose existence was at center Van entire controversy, was asked about 7 prophecies during interview in May 2026. After several months Van intensive media attention following revelation, his response showed complicated mixture Van wanting to believe father had been thinking about him while also recognizing reality. Van decades Van neglect. I watched speech after theory came out, listened to 7 statements, tried to hear message meant for me. Part Van me wants to believe na 31 years Van not existing taught him. I was finally acknowledging me even if indirectly through code. But realistic part knows that even if I included statements about undisclosed children and needing taught face truth, that doesn't change fact that I abandoned me for 3 decades, didn't provide support, didn't have relationship. 7 statements in speech don't make up for 31 years Van absence. So whether code was real or not, doesn't fundamentally change my feelings about situation. This response reflected emotional complexity, been someone wanting validation from absent father, while also protecting against false hope or generous interpretation of limited gestures. Alternative theories emerged challenging Dr. Santos's original framework, while still accepting premise that something meaningful was embedded in speech. Dr. Patricia Lim, psychology professor at Ateneo de Manila University specializing in subconscious communication, proposed in paper published May 2026 that statements weren't deliberate coded messages, but rather psychological leakage, unconscious verbal expression Van suppressed anxiety about secret, citing research showing that people harboring significant secrets often inadvertently reference those secrets indirectly in casual conversation through repeated themes, word choices, metaphorical language that reflects preoccupying concern. Our analysis suggested Manny was not constructing intentional prophecy, but rather unable to prevent subconscious expression Van anxiety about Eman's situation, leaking into public speech through thematic repetition, regarding undisclosed children and facing truth. Alternative explanation that was psychologically more plausible than elaborate conscious code, while still accounting for meaningful pattern in identified statements. In Juni 2026, exactly 1 year after original Hall of Fame speech at approximately 6 Months after Dr. Santos's paper brought widespread attention to 7 prophecies theory, documentary filmmaker Maria Santos, no relation to Dr. Adrian Santos who originated theory, released 45-minute documentary titled The Pacquiao Code, Prophecy or Pattern. For streaming platform Netflix Philippines, documentary that was most comprehensive examination to date Van controversy, featuring interviews with all major participants including Dr. Adrian Santos, defending his theory, Dr. Linda Chen offering academic critique, speechwriter Ricardo Mendoza providing insider perspective, linguistic expert Dr. Maria Flores discussing textual analysis, family members including Jimuel and eventually Eman offering personal reactions, extensive footage Van Hall of Fame speech itself, with annotations highlighting identified 7 statements, broader context about Manny's career, EMAN's background, social significance Van illegitimacy in conservative Philippines culture, documentary attempted taught present balanced view, though structure clearly favored interpretation dat, while elaborate numerical code was bably overstated, meaningful subtext was genuinely present in speech reflecting Manny's internal conflict and semi-conscious preparation for revelation. Documentary's most powerful moment quam toward end during extended interview with EMAN, conducted at his modest home in Cagayan de Oro, approximately 1 year after public revelation. Filmmaker asked him directly, "After everything you've learned about timeline, DNA testing in April, your father knowing results in May, speech delivered in June, revelation in December, and after hearing various theories about whether speech contained coded message about you, what do you believe was in your father's mind when I gave that speech?" Eman paused for approximately 10 segundos, clearly emotional before responding. "I think I knew about me. Knew truth would come out eventually. Was scared and guilty and didn't know how Todd handle it. I think when I wrote speech I was trying to convince himself Todd do right thing, telling himself stories about facing truth and honoring family obligations, working up courage. I don't think I was sending secret message Todd public Todd Decode later. I think I was sending message Todd himself. You need Todd face this, you need Todd acknowledge this son, you need Todd be brave." So prophecy wasn't predicting future, was prescribing what I should do. Didn't follow through for another 6 months, took leak forcing his hand. Our intention was there in June. That's what I choose Todd believe because alternative, that I had no intention and only acknowledged me when forced, is too painful Todd accept. This interpretation, speech as self-directed prescription rather than public-directed prophecy, as aspirational commitment to doing right thing rather than coded announcement, as psychological preparation rather than strategic messaging, offered most psychologically plausible explanation reconciling evidence, than meaningful embedded content with absency, than elaborate intentional code, understanding that was both more charitable taught Manny's character, and more realistic about limitations than his strategic sophistication, and documentary's presentation than Day's interpretation through Eman's voice, gave it particular emotional weight making it effectively consensus view among viewers, even if academic debate continued. By late 2026, approximately 18 months after original speech and 1 jar after revelation, public conversation about 7 prophecies had largely moved on to other topics, though theory remained part Van Pacquiao lore, referenced occasionally in discussions about his legacy, taught as case study in university courses about celebrity communication and numerology, subject Van occasional social media debates when someone discovered theory for first time, were no longer headline news, and what remained was nuanced understanding that Manny's Hall of Fame speech had contained meaningful subtext related to Eman's situation, reflecting his internal emotional state, and semi-conscious awareness that revelation was approaching, whether exactly 7 statements constituted deliberate prophetic code was probably overstated. More central insight, that Manny was wrestling with secret publicly before revelation, was valid, and story ultimately revealed more about human psychology than about mystical prophecy, about how people processing difficult secrets inadvertently express that processing verbally even when trying to maintain public facade, about complexity than attributing intentionality to past actions, when motivations are always mixed and partially opaque even to actors themselves, about how we construct narratives about public figures that serve our needs for their characters to be coherent, even when actual humans are messy and contradictory.